as companies get bigger and keep publishing more content, you end up with a blog post on this topic and another one pretty similar, and you get some overlap and you get multiple pieces that are competing for those same terms. You kind of get the internal competition. Are kind of two of the biggest reasons we would see that. But yeah, I mean, it happens all the time. I mean, people have been told for 15 years to, create content. Like, that's the way to go. And there's just massive amounts of content out there that's underperforming.
Welcome to Show Me the Nuggets, where each week Joe chats with world-class entrepreneurs to find out the key principles, strategies, and processes that lie behind their outstanding achievements. Now, your host, the no-bullshit serial entrepreneur, Joe Troyer.
Hey everybody, welcome to Show Me the Nuggets. Today we have on Nate Turner, where we're going to be talking about how he helped grow a company from 100,000 to 22 million in 5 years with inbound marketing, and then actually scaled to well over $100 million in revenue. He is the co-founder now of 10 Speed, and actually came from Sprout Social as a super modest startup to doing over $100 million in revenue as his time there. And I'm really excited to pick Nate's brain. So Nate, without further ado, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Joe. I'm glad to be here.
So I always like to start with just the background. Like, how'd you end up in this world of digital marketing as we know it?
Yeah. So I was working with a company pretty fresh out of college, and we were not like a digital company, but they were redoing a website and asked me to kind of project manage that in one of many things I was doing. And near the end, developer asked me what I wanted the SEO keywords to be, which I did not know. So I had to go look it up. And I just remember, that night in my apartment, just like read a couple articles and then just read a few more and just couldn't stop. And that was just like the beginning, and I, no looking back basically. So really just started immersing myself into SEO and digital more broadly. And then got a job with a small agency doing SEO, PPC, some web redesign stuff. And then from there joined Sprout and kind of grew that. So yeah, it's pretty wild how it sort of happened accidentally, but it was great.
It's funny. It's always those accidental stories. Like, that's what we hear so much on the podcast. It's funny how just timing and pure coincidence makes for these crazy outcomes.
Yep, totally.
So I'm sure that most of the podcast listeners, if not like quite all, have heard of Sprout Social. You obviously were the first marketer ever at Sprout Social and helped lead the inbound marketing and really helped spearhead that revenue growth, or at least a big part of it, going from zero to 100K and then to 20 plus million, and then to over 100 million in revenue, and then to their IPO. I'd love to hear about what you think kind of the 80-20 was of the content marketing initiative. What was the big things, not kind of the traditional title tags, meta tags? What were kind of the big things that led to that group, to that growth in terms of content marketing?
Yeah. So the very first iteration of the blog was actually a little bit more of like kind of like quasi news site. So almost like a Mashable type of look at like social and what's happening. It was such an emerging space. And then when the editor of that left, probably like 2 years in or so, I took over ownership of the blog and the team. And there was really kind of a well-rounded effort within all of marketing, but that's where we really started to shift into a lot of, much more like SEO content, and specifically creating content on topics to be, thorough and ranking. And I would say that, 80-20 from content marketing standpoint was really, understanding our audience, and not just, we could write about social media topics, but it really was understanding that our audience was social media marketers. It was digital marketers. It was people in agencies. And so understanding kind of everything that they had on their plate, which is not just, tweeting or engaging on a social platform. It's multi-channel, it's understanding, it's measuring, the impact, all of that stuff. And so really understanding the broader audience led to topics that weren't necessarily totally tied to our product, but really were still helpful to our audience. So built a lot of authority and trust there. And then also, some of the co-marketing stuff we were able to do with other companies across, Zendesk and Unbounce and companies that were sort of tangential to what we did, but very much relevant to a digital marketer who's responsible for a lot of stuff. So I think that was huge, just kind of not limiting ourselves to that one topic, but really understanding our audience better and then catering to everything that they cared about.
Gotcha. Yeah. So kind of going full circle, so to speak, on everything that they think about, they care about, what, really dominating the conversation, not just on social, but everything that they would be thinking about.
Hey, real quick, before we dive into the rest of this episode, real quick, I promise my team and I would like to personally thank you, our audience, yes, you listening right now, for all the amazing support that you guys have been giving the podcast. The growth has been just crazy, and I want you to know that we're super, super appreciative to you. So we've been trying to think of something cool that we could do to give back to our audience, to give back to you guys. And I think we've come up with something that's really, really unique. It's something that's special. So here's the thing. The team here at Digital Triggers, my own little team here, has decided that we're going to give away a gift pack that includes our top of the line resources to sell SEO, right? We know that so many of you guys out there are agencies. This is going to literally give you contracts, proposals, pitches, scripts that you guys can use, outreach templates. It's a pack of assets and collateral for anybody wanting to sell SEO services or marketing services to any type of business, not just local businesses. This has been used to land e-com deals, all kinds of deals out there. So if you didn't hear that, let me make it a little more clear. Okay, our Digital Triggers family is giving you some of the best of the content and the resources that we've ever put together, absolutely free, just for listening to the podcast. Okay, all that you have to do is go to digitaltriggers.io/gift pack. And you are good to go, folks. It is that simple. We'll make sure that this page is up and ready for you guys by the time this episode airs. And with that being said, let's get back to the episode. All right, that was all right. I think that went okay.
And you said something interesting. You talked about partners, right? And collaborating with other brands. Can you talk to us a little bit about what that meant, Nate?
Yeah. So the way we really approached it was, we know that social ties into a lot of places. So like, for Facebook ads, like there's the social ads and there's landing pages. And so like, that was an easy one, for like partnering up with Unbounce. They do so much with ads and landing pages. Social is a big channel for customer service and customer care. So that's another area we can kind of branch into. So really it was kind of looking at who some of the leaders were in those spaces. Wistia, we did one with them for video and like video and social and how that works together. And so the goal was always create a ton of value for our audience and prospects and customers, like by essentially going and finding the experts in those areas and then, crafting topics that would overlap with social and make it relevant to our audience, but also really just educating and making them better. So that was, not just blog content, but the co-marketing, like webinars or guides we would do together, anything like that. And then some of the other like research content that the marketing team was doing, like always just trying to find ways to be a resource and make people better at their jobs and add value that way.
I love the collaboration approach and the co-branded approach. And actually a topic that we really haven't talked about much here on the podcast. I'd love to dive a little bit deeper in this because we do have a lot of people that follow us that really do a ton of content. They do lots of guides, really good content. They really have spearheaded content well. But I feel like we haven't really talked about kind of the co-brand opportunity. And I feel like that could be really, really interesting to some of our audience. You comfortable with that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Perfect, man. So when you think about that collaboration, what's the pitch to the Wistia or to the other brand? Like, how do you get somebody's attention at that level? Like, what are they interested in? What are they not interested in? Tell us kind of what works on that front.
Yeah. So there's a couple of things. One is I think I don't remember exactly what the saying is, like punching above your weight class or whatever. Like, you can't go too far, like you can't have a blog that gets a few visitors and 8 people on your subscriber list and do something with a big brand. So I think kind of knowing where you're at and trying to find some companies that seem to be kind of on that level, or a little above, because you start to get some advantages there. But you work with some that are also below you and you're kind of helping them out. So I think that's one, is really just kind of understanding where that's at. Because at the end of the day, so much of it is about kind of what each company feels they can commit to bringing to the table in terms of promotions. So that's, your email list, but it's also your social channels and anything you have there, because you want it to be pretty fair on both sides, and people feel like you're equally contributing. And then I think the other is, it's a ton easier when you can find companies that you can see through their site or social channels that they've done similar stuff. So when you can see that they've kind of done this already with a few other companies, then it's really easy to see who's that person in that video, or who's the name on this piece of content. And you have a pretty good starting point for where to reach out. And typically, I think a lot of companies that are doing it are pretty open to finding new partners in new ways. And I would say the third part is just really, like I said, kind of contextualizing why you think what they know is helpful to your audience, and also why your audience is a good fit to what they know and in their objectives and whatnot. So kind of really helping bridge that gap in some of the outreach, I think, is important too, because it's not just some random thing. Like, you have a pretty clear reason for why you chose them, and why you want to connect on that. Yep.
That makes perfect sense. So once you find the partners, you agree upon something, at least at the highest level, right? Like, it's of interest. What's the commitment, right? So you just pitched me. I'm like, yes, I own something that's related. A content collaboration, a partnership would be great. I can see the value. It makes sense for me to send my users to you. It makes sense for you to send your users to me. What's contextually the responsibility or the agreement past just that?
Yeah. So the thing that I've always tried to do is have some give and take, or feels like kind of equal amount of work for either side. So if I were to come to you and say, hey, I think we should do this together, this is a great fit. Here's a topic we'd love for you to cover, or 3 ideas. Would you be willing to do that? That's putting a lot of work on you, because you have to kind of be the one to present and put together the content. And so the flip side would be, we'll host it. We'll build the landing page. We'll do, the technical, hosting of the webinar, or, we're going to design out the PDF if it's a guide or something like that. And that way it feels more balanced. Or it's the other way around. Like, we have this topic, we think it'd be great, we're willing to do it. Would you be able to host or whatever? So typically, a little bit of back and forth of, who it makes the most sense to do those things, and how to kind of share the work so it feels fair.
Gotcha. So when those happen, and that makes perfect sense, right? Like, you want to take a lot of the legwork away if you can. If you already have the systems and processes, makes it a lot easier for them to say yes. So then you're going to do some type of promotion to that marketing piece, whether it's a webinar or a piece of content or whatever it is. And you're both going to do it together. Is that kind of the idea? Like, hey, I'm going to promote, you're going to promote, and then kind of it's over? Or tell me about the next, like, what is a typical deal? And I'm sure they're not all typical, but tell me how a deal could work.
Yeah. I think typically you would want to land on some idea of like a relative target. So, we want to generate 1,200 leads from this. And we want roughly, 600 from each of our audiences. And some companies are pretty hardcore, and they want to like kind of try to compare and make sure that they're not like we're actually getting net new 600 from your audience, like people that weren't already in our database. But I would say most of the time it's just sort of coming up with that target that everyone agrees on. They feel is like reasonable, that they can actually generate that many. And then I think typically the goal is to have that lead share. Like there's you're sharing the full list with each other. Obviously, you have to go through the right steps on sort of the legal copy in there and making sure people understand that there's both of those and any sort of GDPR and that kind of stuff. But within that, I think that's the most common. And there are cases though that it's just very, let's do this together so we have a smart piece of content that we can use however we want. And it's not necessarily that we're all promoting to the same thing. It's just we've both done this. We can both take it and do whatever we want, however we want to use it in ads or email promotion or anything like that. So I think that's probably the two most common is either lead share or just collaborating on the content and then each goes their own way. But and then from there, it's kind of a mix of like some companies can send one email to a portion of their database and totally accomplish it. Others will do email and organic social and paid social and a number of things to really get to that level and promote it. But either way, it kind of just exposes your company to a new audience that is still relevant and sort of again tangential to what you're doing.
Love it, man. So let's step out for a second. Really appreciate the insights there. Definitely some nuggets, and I know some of our users are going to be able to definitely run with those tactics.
Sure.
Tell us about 10 Speed. What the heck is 10 Speed? How did it all come together? Give us the background.
Yeah. So 10 Speed is a tech-enabled content optimization service. So we layer right on with teams that are already doing content creation, blogging, content marketing. And we are basically layering in our SEO expertise and an understanding of that to really focus on how to optimize existing content that you already have to perform better, as well as how to guide the creation of new content to perform. And so very focused on SEO content specifically, so content that would rank in search engines. And so, yeah, we don't do any of the writing. We layer right on. So you already have writers or freelancers, how you're kind of doing that. We're just sort of that fractional resource that slots in and helps companies out. So my co-founder was with me at Sprout Social for 5 years, leading SEO. And so we've kind of both had exposure there and then both gone off and done our own things elsewhere, and just super passionate about SEO and content and the results they can get for companies. And so that was just a pretty logical thing for us to want to create a company around that.
Awesome, man. That makes perfect sense. So you guys are obviously experts when it comes to content marketing and SEO. What do you think are the biggest struggles and mistakes that you see real brands making that are trying to attack content and trying to attack content marketing that you see over and over? What are the biggies?
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the big ones and sort of the part of the reason that 10 Speed exists is like, it's just so common big companies all the way down to people just kind of running their own blog is like kind of just getting this hamster wheel of like, I got to create new. And it's, how much new stuff are we creating constantly? And there's never a look back into what's there, what's working, what was working, but has declined in performance and actually needs to be optimized again. So that's a big part of where 10 Speed comes in, is in that, like, just kind of helping people look back and see how much opportunity they actually have within what they already have. So I think that, the hamster wheel issue is definitely a big one. And then I would say, not having like, it's kind of a vague concept, but like not having a clear strategy. Like it's just sort of, we're going to create content on this, and then this month we're going to create content on this. And it's sort of whatever the current topic is, or whatever they're feeling, versus, like I was saying before, like when you really understand the audience and the pain points and the topics that you want to be an authority on as a company, then you can build a pretty clear plan around that and stay pretty focused, and I think get a lot more results. So that would be a couple that I would see.
I love the hamster wheel analogy. I was reviewing at the end of last year my blog here at Digital Triggers, and noticed that like 80% of the referring traffic came into like one blog post, and also 80% or 75% of the new links that were built that weren't just garbage were to like that same piece of content. Yet it's outdated and I haven't touched it in like 12 months. So case in point.
And that's where, like, yes, exactly. And it's just, there's so common, whether it's like, I'd say the two biggest reasons that content performance declines is, one is that just competitors, like you wrote it a long time ago, and then since then competitors are coming in and being better or staying on top of it, and it's just, slowly kind of pushes you down, you lose some traffic. Or as companies get bigger and keep publishing more content, you end up with a blog post on this topic and another one pretty similar, and you get some overlap and you get multiple pieces that are competing for those same terms. You kind of get the internal competition are kind of two of the biggest reasons we would see that. But yeah, I mean, it happens all the time. I mean, people have been told for 15 years to, create content, like that's the way to go. And there's just massive amounts of content out there that's underperforming.
So I see a massive piece or a massive topic in the industry is whether or not to keep all of your underperforming pages or not, right? From an SEO perspective, right? When you got the 4 posts, 5 posts, 100 posts that are about the same thing, what do? Right? Like, do you build one massive piece that's the best piece? Do you get rid of the others? I'm curious kind of your perspective on that topic, if that question makes sense, if you got what I'm saying.
Yeah, definitely. So there's certainly, I think, especially when you get into like hundreds or thousands of blog posts on your site, there becomes a real benefit to just outright deleting content. And it's pretty obvious which ones. It's like, this has 0 backlinks and it has no impressions or barely any impressions and no traffic in the last 90 days. Like, and no internal traffic. It's not a popular post that people are finding through your own site as well. So like, there's definitely some opportunities there. And the benefit of deleting some of that old stuff is that you're decreasing the amount of pages that a search engine has to crawl, which puts more time and efficiency into the ones that you do care about. And the other is really, and that's the content consolidation is the other part that I think you were sort of unintentionally teeing up for me, which is like a big part of what we do with 10-speed, because we're seeing the internal competition or just things that are loosely related. And you might have, an 800-word blog post over here and another one, and one that kind of talks about it. And we're able to kind of look at a lot of that data and understand, like, here's the core topic. Here's the piece that should be the main one. And we're going to take, maybe parts from these, bring them together into the main one, and then recommend, 301 redirects to that main one, which gives more signals to search engines. Like, this is the one for the topic. But that's definitely the case. So sometimes deleting content outright, and then when there is some internal competition or things that are good and getting traffic, but they're related, you can certainly combine them into a much more thorough piece of content, and then redirect. Yep.
Makes perfect sense. So when you were talking about the reasons why kind of content dies and doesn't become relevant anymore, you hit my scenario on the head. You gave 2 examples. Mine was, I was the first to talk about it. I got a bunch of links. I got a bunch of attention. And as time went on, like you described, more and more people wrote about the topic, and more people that have way more authority on their site than I do started writing about the topic. And so what happened is, as I didn't keep up with it, their content started to outrank mine. So you hit it right on the head. I'm curious, if you were in my shoes, what would you do if you were me? Like, what would be the process to reinvigorate that or keep an eye on that and keep reinvigorating it. If you got a content piece like that makes up so much of your inbound links and or traffic or used to, what would be a system or a process for somebody to build and to manage to keep it running and to keep it performing well?
So I think there's a number of aspects. One, I would say, is probably the biggest is you're just literally, whatever that sort of core topic is, or if you went through in Search Console and saw maybe the top 5 or 10 queries that drive the most traffic to your to that post, literally just searching all of those in Google and looking who is in the top 10, and you may be ranking above some or below, but just clicking into each post, studying it like 4 or 5 of these are all touching on this additional part of it, and I actually don't have that part in mine, so I'm going to bring that in and do that. Or the tone or the angle that's being taken is a little more how-to or a little more broken down in steps or anything like that you could kind of glean from that and really then go back and just modify what you're doing there. So I would say that's probably like the biggest part of it and the biggest step. And it's just a kind of matter of figuring that out. And then there's some other things to do that, like in, Search Console or, an SEO tool, you could kind of see, here are some of the additional keywords that are matching to this post, but they're like, maybe the position that you're ranking for those is, the second or third page. And then looking at your own content, realizing we actually don't talk about this enough, or it's sort of buried paragraphs. So we're going to bring it out into like its own H2 and like cover that in a little more depth, because that's something that we're seeing Google matching to it. We're just not covering it well enough. So that would probably be like a couple of the biggest things you could do to do that.
Awesome, man. That makes sense. Thank you. That's great. I'll jump on that and I'll share the results with you. I'll share the win.
Let me know how it goes. Yeah.
So I think we're now on page 2, but it's a big search term. It's very relative, and it's been sliding. So this podcast is at perfect timing. Cool, man. So this has been really, really good, Nate. I appreciate your time. I'm sure that all of our listeners do as well. I want to wrap it up in asking one last question. So instead of asking you to recommend 3 books, which I feel like kind of every podcast does, I like to ask a little bit of a different question, a little bit of a different twist. And what I want to ask you, Nate, is what's the one book that's made the biggest impact on the way that you do business or that you approach business, and why?
Yeah, that's good. I certainly could name 3. I would have to say, well, I'll kind of cheat, I guess, and call it a tie, but like, I think they're pretty similar. Like eMyth and Built to Sell. I think have a lot of the same concepts, but to kind of merge them and draw it together, it's like, there's a way to do it that you're building a company that's very clear process, good systems. Like I'm just a very systems thinking kind of person. And so I think that was really huge for me, that sort of demystifies like, how do you build a company and scale it up and know that you're doing it in the right way. And I think, and that you will have consistency as it scales. And so those 2 books together, I think as one, it's cheating, is really been impactful, because I think it's just that concept really just changed the way I thought about kind of moving forward with some of the consulting I was doing before, and then even into 10-speed now.
Awesome, man. So in the show notes, we'll be sure to link up 10-speed. It's 10speed.io, correct?
Yep.
10speed.io. And then we'll also link you up on social. It looks like LinkedIn, you're the most active. Is that right?
Yeah. Yep.
All right. Perfect. All right, brother. I really appreciate your time. I know that all of our audience does as well. And maybe we'll have you back in the future, man.
Cool. Sounds good. Thanks, Joe.
All right. Fantastic. See you later.
Bye.
See you, everybody.
Thanks for tuning in and Show Me the Nuggets. If you've been enjoying the podcast and find our content helpful, please visit our Apple Podcast page, hit the subscribe button, and leave us a review. Joe and the whole team have been working hard to bring more value to the show. Your feedback will go a long way in helping us make the show better and reach a wider audience.